Welcome to yet another edition of our podcast, The Brand Called You. Today we have one of the most multifaceted individuals, friends who I know, Satinder Kapur. Satinder, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for agreeing to be a part of the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So just by way of background, Satinder is from IIT Delhi. Then he was one batch senior to me at business school. And I don't remember, but I think he ragged me also. In those days, ragging was permitted. Then he joined the corporate world, joined Hindustan Levers, now Hindustan Unilever. Then he became an entrepreneur, and then he became a lawyer. So before I get into any specific questions with Satinder, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about your journey from IIT to MBA to the corporate world to an entrepreneur to a lawyer.
Thanks, Ashutosh, for this opportunity and for me to be able to share some of the good moments, some of the difficult moments that I've had to face. But let me start by looking back at the entire thing and having the wisdom, like they say, of hindsight, which if you have it at the beginning of the journey, nothing like it. Now I've come to the conclusion that things seem to be destined to some extent. Not that I'm talking about only destiny and not your own hard work, but whatever you might do, you might set out with one direction. Sometimes destiny takes you into another, which you are really not aware of when you start the journey. So if I go back into my childhood memories, and I must share those with you, I was always told, not directly, maybe indirectly, that my elder brother was to be a chartered accountant and I was to be an engineer. And possibly my wonderful late parents saw that spark of this ingenuity in me, which made them think that I'm more of a hands-on kind of a person. To make matters even better, I entered into some elocution contests and debating contests in my school life. And every time I got a prize, it was a book on engineering. So I started reading about the engineering. It kind of sparked an interest. And there it was. I mean, at the end of the day, when I passed out from school, I sat for the joint entrance exam and I qualified. And I joined IIT Delhi, one of the most looked up to institutes at that point in time. And I qualified in electrical engineering. And that's the time I got, after completing my engineering in a very high first division, I got an offer from the Phillips International Institute in Eindhoven in the Netherlands to go on and complete my master's in science in digital electronics. They had one or two people from every developing country. And I was offered that. Initially I accepted it. But then I thought, that you have to come back and work in this country. And so let me get into a bit of general management rather than focus only on technology. Maybe a good or a bad decision, but completely changed the course of my life. So some decisions are very, very strategic, like a fork in the road kind of a decision. That was one of them. I went and joined the Bajaj Institute in Bombay, qualified, joined Levers, and I was put into the marketing division of Hindustan Levers. A lot of people were vying for that job and I could make it in a campus interview. But then I worked there. I completed my management training. I completed a rural development stint. I was thrown around different departments. Very interesting, very good, huge learning experience. And then I joined them as a covenanted manager and worked for about 2.5 years in Delhi. But every time I was sitting in a meeting, the strategy being discussed was how to sell soap. How much soap to sell? And I used to think, what am I doing here? I thought I was a misfit in that scenario. There's a fire burning inside. What am I doing? Why am I concentrating on how much soap to sell? Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Yeah.
But it has to fit into your core system, your values. I said, no, I've got better things to do. I'm an engineer. I've qualified. Possibly my parents also. My parents were very happy, by the way, that I'm in a very cushy job. My father's been in the government, so there was a sense of security which you lose the moment you take a decision to break the path and come out. And I did just that. I quit from there one fine morning, and I started my own entrepreneur business. Set up a small metal packaging industry, did very well, got on to a bigger industry. I started manufacturing high-tech electronic tapes in Himachal, went public, sold a rights issue single-handedly, did very well. Market cap was very well. But then a lot of things changed, and I'll talk about it a bit later. What I could have done, which I did not do, again all in hindsight. And there were difficult moments, and let me tell you, Ashutosh, I think you are fully aware of it. It's not at all an easy task to set up a new industry of being a first generation entrepreneur in India. Big challenge, I think anywhere in the world, but more so in India. But let that be as it is. Having set up an industry, huge challenges were there. There was change of market preferences. There was change of product life cycle. And I'll talk about it later, which forced me to come out of the industry, face huge legal problems, etc. Balance is history.
Wonderful. So we'll come to your journey as a lawyer after a few minutes. But once you left Hindustan Lever, you started your own business. I remember you telling me that you were doing so well that you used to match the color of your car with the color of your tie.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm right on that, right? So, you were very, very successful. What happened? Why did you decide to walk away from your business? And then what led you into becoming a lawyer?
Very easy and a very difficult question for me, because it takes me back into the thick of things. I think the first wrong move which I did was to get out of my core business. Core business, I started off with the packaging industry, which was very much compatible with my pocket size. I had limited funds, as anybody would in that situation. And I set up an industry in Delhi, in Noida. Then I had 3 units, metal decor, and I was challenging companies like Metal Box, Poisha, Larsen Toubro. They were the three biggest metal decoration and metal packaging players at that point of time. And here we came along, small scale industry, set it up, did very well, got a huge market share. I should have continued. I made a lot of assets from my own earnings, hard-earned, tax-paid earnings. One thing is, you got to be honest to yourself and to your surroundings. And we did that from day one. Did very well. That's the time I got married, had a family. And every day was a beautiful day that I didn't owe a cent to anybody. A lot of people owed money to me. A very comforting thought. A lot of assets, cars, like a few of cars I had, and luxury of life. Then what? Then what? You're possibly, and I think I now remember very vividly, I overheard my father saying that, my son is an engineer, selling a friend of his, and he is going to set up a huge project one day. I need not have done that. I was very comfortable, and today I would have been sitting over assets of about a few thousand crores, if I may say it. But there are no regrets, let me clarify. And I said, no, I'm a technically qualified person. I'm in a rudimentary metal packaging industry, not realizing there's nothing wrong with that. I must set up something much more complex, more challenging, bigger, And I went and set up a public limited company. I got technology from across the world, not realizing that the mammoth proportions of what I was getting into was so huge that it might one day turn out to be a big problem for me. But then, if you are successful, probably you will be there in the top league. And that was the burning thing inside my mind, that I have to be there. Now, what there is, or what the definition of there is, something in the air. So I set this up and got technology. I had about 300 people working for me, 3 shifts a day. And
This was in Himachal.
This was in Himachal, most respected company in and around Shimla. All the bureaucrats of the state used to call me up and say, we would like our son or my daughter to come and intern with you, to work with you. It was a great honor for us. But then fortunes changed, in the sense that the entire product, like we were making videotapes from scratch, the entire product life cycle came to an end. We were threatened by different product formats. The demand kind of vanished in a matter of a few months.
Wow.
How the satellite television, how the digital formats, how the other forms of communication took over, and the preferences completely changed. I don't think children of our generation, present generation, have seen, even heard of a VCR.
Yeah.
VCR was something every household carried.
Correct.
And therefore a tape was used, and we used to make those tapes in bulk. Things changed, and there were huge problems. There were losses which are coming up. You were not able to service the bank loans. So the departments were breathing down your back. The creditors were knocking at your door. And all that you had earned was then used to repay some of the liabilities in order to be able to save your honor, which I'm very glad that I'm sitting here today in spite of all that. There were offers from competitors to take you over for a minuscule amount of capital. We said, no, we will still try to see how we can get over this. We'll try to get into another product format. But unfortunately, the BIFRs and the AIFRs of this country, they are manned by bureaucrats. I remember having gone to the BIFR, the Bureau of Industrial Financial Reconstruction, single-handedly trying to sell my case that no, my industry is not gone down the drain. I can still recoup it. I can make another product out of it. They didn't understand. They should have more of technical people there, but they were like income tax officers sitting on deputation. Didn't understand what I was saying. So ultimately went into the Delhi High Court. I said, okay, fine, let's protect ourselves. Let's either turn around the company or liquidate it, depending on what's good for the company and what's good for the nation. In the process, Ashutosh, I remember there were about 200 plus court cases which I was facing.
Wow.
Creditors, company law, labor issues, banks, the works, excise. And that's the time when I thought, when I used to go to lawyers, I sold a few properties to pay fee of my lawyers, very senior accountants. I used to go with them to the courts. That was my first skirmish experience with the courts. I remember having gone to Supreme Court and down to the district courts. And I found that these guys were not exerting themselves. I was opening my mouth before the court. My lawyer was standing next to me, would not open his mouth because for whatever reason. And I was paying them through by selling our properties. And one fine morning, and I must narrate this incident if you have a bit of time. And that's a turning point again. So I was sitting in the Delhi Gymkhana Club. I happened to be a member because of my late father. And I used to go there because things were very, very economical, very cheap. Yet it was a very nice atmosphere. I remember sitting there one day, sipping a cup of tea in the lawn, deeply dejected and despaired, despondent, trying to understand what next. Why has this happened? What has happened? I had a family to care, a huge amount of problems. What was the difficulty? I was a first generation entrepreneur. did nothing wrong, tried to do my best, but things didn't work out. And this is something to keep in mind. Things may not work out always. So this small child, Muhammad Ali, was about 5 years of age. And I was at that time around 38 years of age, 39. So he came to me and said, "Can I sit with you, uncle?" I said, "Yes, why not?" Then in his broken Hindi, he asked me a very strange question. It set me thinking. He said, "Uncle, आप बड़े होके क्या बनोगे?" आप बड़े होके क्या बनोगे? What do you mean? What do you want to do, become when you grow up? I said, what is this child saying here? It means I still have a future. I have to become something because the child is asking me, as if God is asking me through the child's mouth. And I have to grow up. As if I've just been born, but I have 40 years of experience as a child. And I said, let me do my SWOT analysis for the teacher in management school, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So I came to the conclusion that capital is my weakness right now.
Yeah.
Because I burned out all the cash, I burned out everything that I had. But there are opportunities. And one of the glaring opportunities facing me was my experience with the lawyers at that point of time. So I said, if you can't win them, join them. And this is a good field because these guys are earning good amount of professional fee and it's a very respectable profession. So the next day I went and enrolled myself in law college.
Amazing.
At the age of 39. I said, let me go and re-educate myself. And I joined college. And I had a wonderful 3-year stint, which I topped my college in the first division. Because there was a relevant experience. I could understand what the teachers were teaching us. And one fine thing, the first day in college when I went after a gap, when I entered, all the students thought I was the professor and they also said, "Good evening, sir, how are you?" I said, "No, I'm a student. I'm a mature student and there were many of them like me." And then I became a lawyer. And I've been at it for the last more than 20 years now.
Fantastic.
Working internationally.
Yeah. You're one of the few people I know who has transitioned so amazingly from being an engineer in the corporate world to becoming an entrepreneur who was very successful, who faced challenges, and then at age 40 retrained himself to become not just a lawyer, but a very, very senior lawyer, practices in Supreme Court, practices in Mauritius, is part of the bar in England. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the amount of drive you have. But tell me, we've spoken about your entrepreneurial journey. The legal profession is a very, very tough profession with so many lawyers. How did you make a name for yourself in this profession?
Yeah. Well, you have many lawyers, as you have many engineers,
Correct.
as you have many industrialists, as you have many politicians. So there's competition in every field. So more so in law, because I find a lot of youngsters these days opting for the legal profession. In fact, many of them in and around my circle have joined law colleges after school, maybe the 5 years, whatever. So I think to stand out amongst in any industry, you have to, number one, set your direction in a very focused manner. And here I must say a very cliched kind of a statement which I normally always remember. Direction is more important than speed. Imagine you are in the wrong direction and you're running very fast. You're going away from the objective at a very fast rate. But if you're in the right direction and you're moving slow, at least you're inching towards your objective as every day passes by. So my objective was very clear. I have to act professionally in a field in which I can be recognized rather quickly than a field where it will take me those number of years to even make a name for myself. And I think with my corporate experience and very relevant corporate experience and how to solve situations in a business, I thought it would be prudent for me to not only become a corporate lawyer, but a lawyer who does not use or think that law is an end in itself. I think law is something which is to be used to solve those huge amount of problems which every industrialist or a business person faces. Therefore, I position myself as a problem-solving business lawyer who would offer solutions to the corporate world to come out of tricky situations, because that's what I had done. And I think my credibility in establishing this very focused area really helped me to make a niche for myself. And that niche, then I started growing that niche, and then qualified in overseas, like in London and Wales, became a solicitor, started getting opportunities overseas. And today a lot of my clients are spread out in the world. So I think that's what, a focused approach based on your learning. Of course, you relearned the entire thing, but there is a corpus of experience that you have, which you have to use as a springboard. And that's what I did.
Yeah. In fact, that is something which I would very strongly endorse, that you're one of the few lawyers I have worked with who brings in, if I can use the term, a commercial legal perspective. And you don't just tell your client to go and file cases, and then keep on delaying matters because that many, once the general view is that once you get stuck with a lawyer, you're stuck with a lawyer.
Absolutely, for life.
So I think that's something which I would share with all our viewers based on my personal experience. So moving on to some different kinds of questions. 3 different types of professions. You've seen the world, successful in many, many areas. What keeps you going every morning?
Yeah. But on a lighter vein, before I come to the actual answer, I think it's the evening which keeps me going every morning. So that I can have a fruitful day and come back and enjoy myself in the evening.
Correct.
But on a more serious note, I think all the 3 roles or 4 roles that I've possibly seen myself in, like you just mentioned, there's something which is common amongst all these. And I think that's being an entrepreneur. I feel when I see myself that I was always an entrepreneur, and I am an entrepreneur, and probably I'll die as one, hopefully with my shoes on. And I think entrepreneurship is a state of the mind, if I may say it.
Correct.
In a very academic fashion. As a student, I was an entrepreneur because you were finding different methods of doing something which could be easier, innovative. Innovation is an integral part of it. I was an entrepreneur as an executive working with levers. I was trying to find out ways and means of how to do your job in a better fashion and finding challenges in everyday work. So I was as an industrialist. I was actually seen as an entrepreneur, as a first generation entrepreneur who had risked his life, his capital. And then as a lawyer, again, I'm an entrepreneur. So I think it's this spirit which keeps you going. And every morning you see, okay, in this profession, in the legal profession, I must share with you, every day is a different day.
Correct.
The problems which you are going to face are different from what probably you faced in the past days. But the best thing is that they're not your problems. They're somebody else's problems. But then you have to develop the empathy to put yourself into his or her shoes and try to come up with some solutions. That's what keeps me going.
Wonderful. With so much travel that you do, how do you manage your work-life balance? And you've been doing this kind of intensive work ever since you started from Hindustan Lever. 4 decades.
Traveling has been an integral part.
Yeah.
It's great fun, by the way, but it takes a toll on your life, a healthy life. So I feel what approach I have been taking on, and which is something I would recommend to a lot of my young friends out there. I think to have a work-life balance, you need to snatch moments from your life. It's not that you have to take a vacation for a month with your family or your wife or parents or whatever. Leave everything and go, and that's life. I think life is the everyday life, but you got to snatch those moments. I would suggest that if you're traveling somewhere and if you have the luxury of your wife accompanying you or your children accompanying you for that matter, or if there's a weekend coming and you're traveling somewhere, take them along. Of course, at your own expense, not the clients. And then you can snatch those moments. You can have a weekend together. You can have maybe a day together. Make sure that every day you come back and spend whatever little time you're spending at home. You spend those moments with your family. Do what you feel is more relaxing for you, maybe a hobby or whatever. So in essence, snatch those moments. Grab those moments. Don't lose them. Because I tell you, when I was setting up my industry for the first time, I didn't see my children grow up. And one fine morning, I realized my children are now grown up. When did they grow up? So really, in hindsight, I wish I had spent more of those moments with them, not days, at least moments, interacting with them. That's what keeps the balance, I think, in shape.
Understand.
What I feel.
Thank you. We all have failures, we all have learnings. Talk to us about your learning from your biggest failure.
Well, the first thing which comes to my mind, everybody fails, everybody succeeds.
Absolutely.
Some failures are strategic, catastrophic, some failures are run of the mill. I think where I've really failed, if you really ask me and you set my mind thinking of this, as an industrialist or first generation industrialist or an entrepreneur, I think you've got to have your eyes in the sky and your feet and your ears to the ground. I think I failed there. I'll give you a concrete example.
Help us understand that.
I'll give you a concrete example of that. In those high moments, when we set up this huge company and we were exporting high technology products to the Western European clients, selling deeply in the Indian market, and I had a huge sales organization. My salespeople used to come and give me a feedback that, sir, we are not able to sell in this corner of Mumbai or that corner of Chennai or Bangalore because those buildings have now opted for cable television. They don't want individual tapes. I said, what are you talking about? I mean, is this excuse you're making? And we were doing very well at that point of time. Our market cap was very high. I was heading a listed company. And the share price was like 20 times the face value. So I did not give a serious thought to this feedback when the writing on the wall was extremely clear. I failed to read it. If you really ask my feeling, you have to see the future when others don't see it. And I think that's the key word for an entrepreneur, to be able to see what's coming on when the others are blind and oblivious to it. And here I was, people telling me, I failed to realize that this product format is going to collapse. Didn't realize that soon. It did not take more than 1.5 years for the entire thing to collapse. I should have exited part of my shareholding, recovered my capital. I would not be in a difficult situation, but that sense of my belonging, no, this is my company, I have set it up. That's wrong. If I get a financial partner into it, I'll have to dilute my stake. My decision making will be impaired. Those are issues which I think are elements of a huge failure in you. I should have taken different decisions. That's history now. But I failed to read the future. I failed to notice what the writing on the wall was very clear. I ignored the very specific feedback which I was getting from my ground level staff. and I had to pay a price for it. I think that is a big failure.
Yeah, those are very, very wise words, and I'm sure all our listeners will take that on board. So, final question to you. Given again the diversity of your experience, what would your advice be to young entrepreneurs, young professionals, as they look at the next 30 years in life?
Yeah. I think to really summarize whatever experience I've had into a capsule is very difficult, but nonetheless I'll attempt to do that. I think the objective, one common objective of all the budding entrepreneurs who wanted to get into their own startups. Startup is a key word today, which was not there during our time, but now we were startups, but now we are startups.
Well, even as a lawyer, you were a startup.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't realize I was one, but yes, I was.
Yes.
I feel the objective, but there's one common objective to my understanding, that they want to be successful, they want to have a fair return on the capital, maybe more than fair return, build value into their companies, maybe come on the front page of a business magazine, and be successful monetarily, value-wise, and generally go on with life. But I think all this should be a byproduct. It is not the main product. And if my colleagues, my young colleagues, please remember this, that the main product should be, as an objective, the service which you are offering, the product which you are offering, or whatever it is that you are offering as a startup. That is your main product. Please, for heaven's sake, concentrate on that. And everything else will fall in line. You'll have value in your company. You'll have your valuable customers. You'll have your valuable suppliers, your employees, because you are honest to what you're trying to do. But if valuation is your objective, if making money is your objective, I'm afraid you'll soon be in a bit of a spot. So kindly remember that.
Thank you, Satinder. Thank you very much for being so honest and transparent. I'm sure your wise words will be heard by thousands and thousands of people. So thank you once again for coming on the show.
Really,
and
thank you for this opportunity and sharing my thoughts with you.
Thank you.
Really, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.